About to be live.
Daniel, turn that off.
Sorry. All right. Trump just declared a national emergency. Trump just declared a national emergency.
We are live on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, your host, Tony B. We are here to talk to you about the impact of the coronavirus on South Seattle now. Obviously, this is bigger than South Seattle, so we'll also be talking about surrounding areas. And we'll also be giving you a regional perspective, a national perspective, and a world perspective. Joining me will be Candace Jackson from Public Health of Seattle and King County. Are you there with us, Candace?
Yes. Hi, Tony. How are you?
Good. Good to talk with you. And if you want to join us on Facebook, is that right, James? Is that where they can take a look? On our Facebook account, please do that. There will be a slide presentation that Candace will be showing. So go to our Rainier Avenue Radio Facebook page and you will be able to see as well as hear. And for those of you who want to download our app, you can do that. You just go to Google or Apple Store and put in Rainier Avenue Radio, and you can download our app for free. And then go to our app, and then just with one push, go to recent posts, and you can also watch on recent posts, or just play, and you can listen on play. The purpose of this conversation is to share vital information. You know how we get down. This is going to be open, honest conversation. Again, our focus will be on South Seattle. We'll have several guests who will be joining us later in the show, including Bruce Harrell, who is the part of one of the leaders of the Small Business Task Force that was put together by Mayor Jenny Durkin. Also, Amari Salisbury, who is the manager of media for Africatown. Angela Castaneda, who is with the Rainier Avenue RABC, the Rainier Avenue Business Coalition. Susan Davis from the Rainier Chamber of Commerce will be joining us. Angela Castaneda, again with the Rainier Avenue Business Coalition. And then also Deshaun Jackson from John Muir Elementary School. Just a number of different people who will be participating in the conversation today. Michelle, Brandon Smith from Atlantic Street Center, and they've got some new news that it just came to them at 8 o'clock this morning. So we'll have a number of folks joining us. There'll be someone joining us from the Seattle Foundation. I could go on and on about that. But we wanted to make sure that we started off this show with providing you by information. Here's the deal. There are a lot of things that the coronavirus is impacting. Health is obviously one of them, and is a critical part of the coronavirus. That is what this is all about. People are dying. There are, at this point, myths and misinformation being spread that is not going to help the situation. We're not going to tell you how to think or what to think, but we are going to give you information so that you can discern and decide for yourself. There are also communities that are probably going to be impacted more than other communities because historically that has been the case. If you are poor, if you are black, if you are a minority, if you are a person of color, if you are from a marginalized community, if you are unsheltered, if you are homeless, you are probably going to be impacted by the coronavirus more. There are people who are out of work, who cannot work because of the coronavirus. There are people who do the type of work that they will not get sick leave. There are businesses who are losing customers. And again, I'm only still on the tip of the iceberg of how the coronavirus is impacting our communities. And there are still things that we don't know yet. What we do know, and Candace will correct me if I'm wrong here when I get to her, is that there is no cure for this. So it's not like the flu where we have a cure. There is no cure for this. We do know that for some reason it is not impacting young folks. We do know that it is impacting folks who are elderly, folks whose immune systems are compromised or who have other medical problems. we do know that it's passed along very, very easily, and that if you have it and it's not really impacting you, you can still pass it along. We are going to talk about some of these things. Of course, we're also going to hear from members of our community who have the coronavirus and their stories. And we want to hear from you as well. So if you're joining us on Facebook, please feel free to share on the chat, and we'll see if we can get some questions answered. And right now, I'd like to start off this conversation. Also, Marcus, I mentioned Marcus Green from the South Seattle Emerald will be joining us as well. And there's a few other people. And if I haven't mentioned your name, don't worry. We definitely plan to get to you during this show. But we'll start off with the public health of Seattle and King County. And welcome to the show, Candace Jackson. Candace, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Tony?
Excellent. I don't have your title right here in front of me. Can you tell us what your essentially job is in all of this?
Yeah, so my day job is a bit suspended, but I do community partnership work and focus on program development around community-directed strategies in environmental health. That has been co-opted, as many of our jobs have in the public health department, to focus full-time on coronavirus and supporting community, not just with the health impacts, but with the public health impacts, which include things like economics and housing, and your spiritual care and all those other things that go along with you being a healthy whole individual. So in this particular response, my role is community and faith-based task force lead. That is a catch-all for community organizations that are not otherwise touched by some of our other task forces, but some of those we'll get into later in the presentation. You'll have an opportunity to see a little bit how we're structured.
All right, thank you, Candace. And so we're going to start this off with a presentation that I saw that I thought was very informative, and then we're going to get into some of our phone calls. Again, if you would like to see this presentation, you can go on to our Facebook page. Same deal, Rainier Avenue Radio on Facebook, and you will be able to see the presentation. We do know that a lot of you are listening, and so we'll make sure that we give you a wonderful vocal presentation, verbal presentation of this as well. And the other deal is that I also know that there are folks listening outside of Seattle, being what they're calling the epicenter of this coronavirus. We have folks listening from the region, from around the country, and actually around the world, who are interested in understanding what is taking place here in Seattle. So just be aware of that. And for those of you listening who are not in South Seattle, again, our emphasis is going to be on what's taking place in our community. One of the reasons I'm doing that is because this community has been called the most diverse community in the world. The projections go from anywhere from over 60 to maybe 100 different languages and dialects that are spoken in this community. Socioeconomically, you have a number of different folks who live there, from unsheltered folks to folks who are very wealthy and have lived in the community for decades. So it is just a mash of a number of different folks. It is a place where immigrants come to settle, and it's a phenomenal neighborhood if what you want is diversity, and that is something that is wonderful about the community. Now, the other side of that is we don't always get the attention that we deserve when it comes to things like this happening, and an emergency is a perfect example of this. Where do you go in South Seattle? How do you find out what's happening in South Seattle? We've heard about a number of deaths happening in Kirkland. We have areas that I will show you elsewhere where we know the virus is impacting. In South Seattle, that just hasn't happened. We just started finding out about the impact of the coronavirus. Aki-Karosi, still don't know if that's actually confirmed or not. Franklin, other areas. And again, we'll get into this a little bit more, but we have also had a wonderful response from our community, members of our community who have offered to take folks food, who have reached out for different services that they can provide. Our service providers are really on top of it and working hard to make sure that they provide for our community. So if you're listening outside of this community, when I say we may not be getting the resources in, I am excited and proud to share with you a number of the entities, organizations, and individuals who are doing wonderful work within our community. And the thing about this is this happens in this community every single day. Even if the only time you hear about South Seattle in mainstream media is because there's some sort of crime that happened. There, what we do at Rainier Avenue Radio is make sure that folks understand that we amplify the diverse voices of this community. And if you listen to this radio station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you'll hear over 70 different programs produced by members of this community, and everything from conversation about critical issues, some things you might find weird, some things funny. We also broadcast high school sports. We just did the WIAA championships from Yakima and Tacoma. We broadcast music of all kinds: electronica, hip-hop, jazz, native drumming. I could go on. We broadcast in foreign languages. We broadcast in Tagalog and Spanish and more. We also have youth-centric programming. And then we broadcast out in the community. We broadcast live from community events. So Rainier Avenue Radio is your South Seattle community radio station proudly, and we will also make sure that we touch with other communities as well. Okay, Candace, I just wanted to give folks a little heads up. Let's talk about King County Health and the role that Seattle King County Health plays in the coronavirus and just in general.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Tony. We are hard at work here in public health trying to get accurate information out to the community, and also trying to understand not just how that information is landing, but how people are able to implement that guidance that we're giving, and then what we need to be doing to adjust and support community to do things differently. With this particular virus, there's some nuances that, I know I'm in with, taking off my work hat and being on my community hat. There's a lot of stuff I hear in my own community about this. Like, aren't we all getting it anyway? Why does it matter? To, severe panic and people not wanting to leave their house, even if they are healthy adults. So my hope is that today's presentation can help clear some things up about what we know, what we don't know, and decisive about how they choose to move about space and interact in the world right now today. So the big important thing with this virus is that and this is clear, right? But just to remind folks, this is a new virus. That's why we're calling it novel coronavirus. It's a novel virus. We don't have information in science built on this. We are doing this as we go. So the science that is developed about this particular virus is on the move. There are folks researching it and studying it as we have more cases confirmed and as our scientists are able to keep up with that testing data. The other component of this is new, that is not so. A coronavirus is in the same family as other flu viruses. But the thing that makes this really interesting and different than some of the other flu viruses is it is not hospitalizing children in the same way that other flu viruses have in the past. So it is responding a bit differently. It is also living on surfaces longer than typical flu viruses. So there's some interesting nuances to this that make our response to this virus different than some other things that folks may have experienced in their lifetime or have read about in relationship to other pandemics.
Okay, I want to stop you right there, because one of the things that's being said, and Daniel, if you can get us ready to go to commercial breaks, one of the things that is going on out there is that this is very similar to the flu, and there are people who are saying this is nothing more than the flu, and soon that will come to light. This isn't as severe. I mean, even with everything that's going on, even with this happening throughout the world, there are people who are still saying this is just the flu, another form of the flu, that we've had the H1N1, we've had SARS, it's just the flu all over again, and people are panicking for no reason. What is your response to that?
Yeah, this is not just the flu, and the data clearly shows that the rate of severe illness is 10 times more than that of the flu. So what we're talking about here is still, even with the flu, is a relatively small segment of the population. And so one of the things I try to help people understand is what is your individual risk versus what is the population health risk. And when we're talking about individual versus population, people can tend to confuse those because unless you're working in a space where you're looking at cumulative data, that often doesn't make sense. People want to know what's the individual risk to me. And what we look at in a public health space is what is the risk to the overall population. And what we can tell you is that the likelihood is greater for the overall population to experience something like this. It's 10 times greater. You as an individual, there's so many other risk factors that go into calculating what your individual risk could be. We can't say that it's 10 times greater for you as an individual to get coronavirus, right? So there's a nuance there that I think is important to understand. But I will say this is a really serious issue. And as a public health person, if we do our job correct, people will look back on this event and they'll laugh at us and they'll say, we told you so, this wasn't a big ordeal. And I feel like if that happens, we've done our job. We don't want this to spread. And in an ideal situation, all the protective measures we're putting in place, make sure that happens.
Thank you, Candace. Why don't you go ahead and continue? And as you know, occasionally I'm going to interrupt you.
Please do. This is a conversation. And so even on and I will give folks information for our community partner calls. I'm down for the conversational piece. So any point in time, please, Tony, jump in and interrupt. So we want to talk about who's at most risk of severe illness. And let's just say this, right? We're talking about transmission rate. Most of the people who encounter coronavirus will have a mild illness. But if you are not one of those people that have a mild illness and you have a severe illness, the risk factors being you're older than 60, which includes healthy 60-year-olds. I have a lot of folks calling me saying, I can climb Mount Rainier, I run every day, I hike, I'm active, I'm older adult. Do I still qualify as one of those people who have a risk factor? Yes. If you are over 60, this is a risk factor. Underlying medical conditions. Some folks want to know, well, my diabetes is under control. Does that still count? Yes, it still counts. Weakened immune system. So folks who have organ transplants, skin conditions, anybody who might be on immunosuppressive therapy, you're taking medication to make your immune system not respond the same way. Those folks are at risk. And pregnancy is also a risk. One of the other nuances of this particular coronavirus is that you can, just like children, can have less severe illness. Maybe it shows up in you like a cold or a cough, or it shows up in a child like a cold or a cough. But that could put somebody else at risk. And the one thing I wanna just remind folks of, you cannot look at someone and tell whether they have a compromised immune system. There are plenty of people walking around who have compromised immune systems or underlying medical conditions, and that is not on Front Street. You can't just tell that by looking at somebody. And so we're asking people to follow this advice because there's no way to know that, right? You might know within your own family, but in the general public, there's no way to know it. So we're asking people to really take these things seriously.
Well, Candace, I'm going to stop you there again briefly because I'm going to interject. Because that was me. I'm 59, but I feel good. Get around. I don't think you'd look at me, but the underlying factors that I have is, okay, I've got sarcoidosis. I've had cancer. I have pulmonary issues due to the sarcoidosis, and I'm also diabetic. And I realized how many flags that raised for me, that people would not know who would come in contact with me, who may or may not take this seriously. And so I had to isolate myself in order to protect myself until we had more information out there, so that people who did not understand that people will die if you give this to them.
Yeah.
Am I overstating that? There is no cure for this. If some people get this, they will die.
So I want to clarify, Tony. I think there is a higher risk of severe illness. I mean, there is no one who will automatically die, and I just want to make that clear. There are plenty of people who have recovered from coronavirus, right?
Do we know that? Do we know? And I'm not trying to over dramatize this, but one person in somebody's family who dies is going to be dramatic for that family. So
absolutely.
Do we know what the cure, in particular for those who are suffering from chronic or diseases or immune systems that are weakened. Do we have information that talks about they've survived and what that survival rate is, or do we not have that information because this is all new
That
yet?
science is not fully developed, and I'm with you, Tony. I would be as cautious as humanly possible. But from a public health standpoint, we cannot blanketly say everyone who catches this disease will die, because there are people who've recovered, right? Across the world, there are people who've recovered. The rate of death, though, is astronomical in comparison to the regular flu as we've seen it so far, right? There are many more people who are um, severely ill and passing away because of this virus in comparison to the regular flu. And I think, I've seen a lot of things out there on social media that are looking at, well, X number of people have gotten coronavirus, X number of people have died. People have to remember we're very early in this response. And a lot of times what people are looking at for the rates of death for flu are over an entire year span. We've not even come close to that yet.
Okay.
Right? We've not even 6 months into this response. So, I think people should be cautious. And to your point, right, when we're talking about low income communities of color, people who are already dealing with chronic health issues, are otherwise disadvantaged, this is going to hit them harder. And my emphasis in thinking about community, I really want people to think, not to be panicked. Yes, if you are a young person or an older person, we're going to get into guidance and what does this mean? Does it mean you have to shut yourself in your house and never talk to anyone for the next 4 months? No, it doesn't mean that, right? And we'll get into what that guidance means. But it does mean to be reasonably protective, right? Like you said, knowing your underlying health conditions and taking the proper precautions to make sure you're safe. And then if you're sick, not putting other folks at risk. Or, if you are one of those people who is in a high contact job environment, like you're a healthcare worker or you're an Uber driver, being really cautious about the folks in your life who may have some of those underlying health conditions as well.
All right, we're going to get back to this. We're going to take a commercial break right here. So, Candace, you're going to stay with us. We're going to take a brief commercial break for everyone else, and we will be back to you in about 3 minutes.
Since 2013, Mojam Mondays has grown into Seattle's largest all-improv jam session where bands of strangers are put on the stage to create original music on the spot.
We're making it up, we're making it happen, and it's life, it's real.
My thoughts are leaking, speaking, but nothing's coming out. Cause when I open my mouth,
When I say Mo, you say jam. Mo, jam. Mo, jam.
Yeah, give it up for these jammers up here. Woo!
Find us weekly at the Nectar Lounge in Fremont and now on RainierAvenueRadio.world from 10 to 11 p.m. Pacific time.
And we're here with Rainier Avenue Radio's Lyrically We Stand.
when you think of Michael Jordan, you call him a black champion.
And hello, this is Naila with Rainier Avenue Radio and the Freshest Roots organization. I just want to make sure that I invite you all out to the Lyrically We Stand open mic. Whether you do storytelling, poetry, you have some lyrics you want to share, or maybe you just have a message that you'd like to get out. So come on down to 5256 Rainier Avenue South, or feel free to tune in at RainierAvenueRadio.world. Again, every third Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m.
Hey peeps, it's your girl KC Diva here. Tune in to my show, Northwest Connection, live each Wednesday at 6 p.m. on RainierAvenueRadio.world. We'll get up close and personal with some of my peeps from around the way in the biz of style, music, entertainment, arts, film, you name it, they're going to be on the show. And don't miss my monthly roundtables with my peeps from the station talking about current events and everything else going on in their world. Northwest Connection with your girl, KC Diva, each Wednesday live at 6 p.m. on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
This is Karen Z with RainierAvenueRadio.world, and we want to hear from you. Our goal is to amplify and share the diverse voices of Southeast Seattle residents. Do you know of an engaged community member who should be featured in a community spotlight? Tell us about them. Do you know of an upcoming family-friendly, educational, or cultural event coming up? Tell us about it. If you have news to share, contact us by emailing rainieravenueradio.world@gmail.com. Once again, please email us at rainieravenueradio.world@gmail.com.
We're back live on RainierAvenueRadio.world. It's me, Tony B. I'm speaking with Candace Jackson. We're having a frank, open, and honest discussion about the coronavirus. We are going to get into the impact of that it's having on specifically South Seattle. That is the neighborhood that we. That's our neighborhood. That's who we are. That's why we're Rainier Avenue Radio. We represent South Seattle, and we give the members of our South Seattle community a place to amplify their diverse voices. And then we also want to make sure that, especially in times like this, that folks who live in South Seattle get accurate information about the coronavirus. And we can talk about this later. But I don't see a lot of resources coming from city government or from some of the money that's being raised that are going to directly impact South Seattle. I'm not saying that they aren't going to go to someone else first, and then someone else will try to figure out how to get it to South Seattle. But what I have seen is a tremendous response from the service providers in South Seattle, from the members of the community in South Seattle, who've taken it upon themselves to say, we need to take care of each other. But we want to get this thing cooking on all cylinders. So we, want to make sure that also our folks in South Seattle have a place to share their concerns, to have a place to go through misinformation, to have a place to say, this is how I'm being impacted, and do that unedited and unfiltered. So South Seattle, we will continue to provide you throughout this whole process with the ability to do that. Now, we're also having a GoFundMe for Rainier Avenue Radio so that we can do this work because, believe it or not, we can't get any money to do this type of work. In the grants that they have available, they don't have anywhere where entities and agencies like this can actually get the funding, even though it increases our workload, and it makes it so that the folks who are here at the station also cannot get paid. But so that's why we're having a GoFundMe, so that we can do a bigger and better job of making sure that we protect our community. So please give to our GoFundMe. And in the interim, we're also going to be trying to convince some of these folks who are getting money to make sure that money comes to South Seattle, and make sure it comes to other independent media who are trying to do what mainstream media cannot do, which is hyper-focused on their communities and the needs of their community. You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio. It's me, Tony B. Again, my guest from King County Health is Candace Jackson. Candace, welcome back.
And I was stressing the point that healthy older adults are also in the vulnerable category, and that's frustrating for a lot of folks. And we'll show some slides in a minute as to why we're giving this guidance. I know for a lot of people it seems extreme. For other people it doesn't seem extreme enough. And there are really calculated decisions that are going into why we're making this. Just to talk about the spread of the virus. And this is in part why we're talking about social distancing, right? These droplets for coronavirus, just like any other virus, can spread up to 6 feet. So when we're talking about social distancing and creating spaces where there are not crowds of people, we're doing that with the intention of making sure there's enough airspace between people so that droplets, whether you're breathing, coughing, or having personal contact, that's not happening, and those droplets are not landing person to person. What we also know, like I mentioned before, is that these droplets can live on surfaces for up to 9 days, which is longer than most other types of coronavirus. So, these are important just health components to understand about how the virus spreads.
Now, if you say they can live on surfaces, is that like a car door handle if it's outside, or a coffee table if it's inside, or a book, or a newspaper, or a flyer?
Yep. Keyboards, mice, light switches, doorknobs, door handles, armchair handles, any commonly touched surface. And we'll get into a list of these, because what I realized is helpful is that sometimes we go through life and we don't even think about the things we touch. And so I have a slide later on that kind of walks folks through what are some of those services. And if you are in a community setting or you're a community-based provider, what should you be thinking about as far as disinfecting and cleaning, and what might you be forgetting, right?
Okay, so I don't
Up
want to
until
I
this
don't want
point,
to I don't want to do anything to get people to not go out to restaurants or whatever. But if you go somewhere and you sit on a chair that has an armrest on it that has not been wiped down with an alcohol-based, property, or a table that has not been properly wiped down, you could have the coronavirus living there.
and I do, and that's a great point, Tony. And so I encourage folks. Well, one, let's remind ourselves that there are a lot of people in our communities that work for these restaurants, right? There are a lot of lower income folks who are servers who have 2 and 3 jobs and depend on those restaurants to stay open. Part of the work we're doing in public health is working specifically with those restaurant providers to make sure they're increasing their sanitation and their cleaning. So we've sent out extra guidelines. We are asking for people when they need extra support around supplies to let us know that. We are working with folks to make sure that some of those places can continue to stay open. And you are correct. Any surface that you mentioned is one of the surfaces that if someone sneezed on that surface and it had not been cleaned, yes, the coronavirus could be there. If you touch it and then you touch your face, your eyes, your mouth, etc., that is an opportunity for transmission. So, I am encouraging people, hand sanitizer, but even more than that, actually regular soap and water works really well on this virus. It erodes the outside of the virus, killing it. Just regular plain old soap and water is the best. If you can't have that, hand sanitizer, and we'll get into that in some of the next slides.
Okay, I'm not trying to scare folks. I'm just saying let's do some due diligence so that we can normalize life, so that we don't live in constant fear and we can do things that we do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And knowing the symptoms are important. We're talking about fever, cough, difficulty breathing, but this is like, if as much as I can take off my King County hat right now and just tell y'all some of the conversations I've been having with just my own family members, we all know when we have that feeling, like that head cold feeling of like you're starting to get sick. You might not fully have a fever, fully have a cough, fully really have difficulty breathing, but you're about to get sick. If you're in that phase, we highly recommend you start self-quarantining immediately. And, that is because we know that this virus can shed prior to these symptoms, right? You don't have to have these symptoms before the virus can shed. So as soon as you start feeling any sort of sick, we're asking people to go ahead and just stay away from other folks. Protect yourself from getting sicker and also protect other folks from acquiring whatever you might have. So 2 to 14 days is the typical length of symptomology and possible exposure once you've been exposed to the virus.
All right, go ahead and continue.
So this graph, I think we added because it's an important one, and it goes to some of the community discussions we've been having about, well, why don't we just all go ahead and get it over with? And there's a real important point that a lot of people don't have to think about that we in public health do, and that is the demands on our hospital and our hospital infrastructure and other infrastructure like childcare or food systems and other things. If we have a dramatic amount of people sick, our hospital systems will not be able to keep up. And let's not forget our regular things like diabetes, hypertension, all the other things that we go to the hospital for and we need emergency care for don't stop just because we have coronavirus. So we want to talk about implementing some of the guidance that we've given as a means to keep this bell curve lower and reduce the demands on our overall infrastructure. And excuse me, with the recognition that, again, a lot of our frontline workers in those systems are communities of color, are lower income folks, are people who don't have the same social safety net.
Are you still there? Oh, I see you
Yep.
now.
So
Okay.
I was just
Eh,
moving my slides.
okay, and you know what? And I'm just keeping it real. You coughed a couple times, and uh, the reaction that people are having to other folks coughing and sneezing in public um, is sometimes pretty severe. When you coughed, because other people are doing this too, what went through your mind? Did you think, Candace, okay, I'm just coughing. Oh, it's just a tickle. Oh, I might have the coronavirus. For you, what went through your mind
Well,
when that happened?
no, because I'm drinking water and I'm choking on it, trying to keep my throat lubricated through this radio call. So I
Okay.
know that I'm not sick, but
Okay.
I am gonna, part of the public health response is around stigma and bias
Uh-huh.
associated with this.
Right.
And I'll be really real. I am a bit more open with asking people if they're sick. Are you sick? Are you okay? What's going on? Why are you coughing?
Yeah.
For yourself and for others, the recommendation is to stay home. Are you able to do that? If people really are sick, I definitely understand that, and I will remind people that we're all human beings, and particularly if you are sick, you need compassion, right? What you don't need is to be further stigmatized, to feel like an outcast. Those psychological, emotional, mental impacts really do have a severe impact on us as individuals, but as a community, and then specifically for communities of color or communities who've already experienced some of that stigmatization, it can be even worse, right? So I would just remind us to balance and moderate our responses to people in that vein. And you are just as likely as somebody else on this planet to be the next person that encounters coronavirus and ends up in that situation. So please move through this world with compassion.
Okay, I want you to continue with steps to reduce the risk of the spread, but I do want to mention that today, as of today, Seattle Parks and Rec has closed recreation centers. In South Seattle, Rainier Vista Boys and Girls Club will be open. There is a $50 fee that you can get to get in, and then you get all the services. But I think that they're also offering scholarships. Starting on Monday, there will be schools that will be open where you can get. My understanding is breakfast and lunch. I did call the number this morning, and they weren't sure if it would be breakfast. So definitely lunch, but it might be breakfast and lunch, and that's one of the things that we want you to get here is updated information. So starting on Monday, you get definitely lunch and potentially breakfast in South Seattle for kids at Seattle Public School students at Dunlap Elementary School, Emerson Elementary School, Franklin High School, Aki Karosi Middle School, Mercer Middle School, Rainier Beach High School, Rainier View Elementary School, and Rising Star African American Academy, formerly Van Asselt. Also Concord Elementary and Denny International Middle School, which are in kind of West Seattle. But anyway, we'll be giving you more information about what's going on in Seattle. So back to you, Candace, and steps to reduce the risk of the spread of coronavirus.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tony. So we'll go through these. This is just a really high level with some visuals. Not going to the emergency room. We'll get into that. Practicing hygiene habits we talked about. We talked about frequently cleaning those high-touch surfaces, staying home when you're sick, avoiding contact with folks who are sick, vulnerable groups avoiding large gatherings, and continuing to stay informed with, and I can't stress this enough, accurate information, understanding where the science is being developed, going to those places, and then making your own conclusions from there. So who should seek medical evaluation? To our first point, this is so important. People panic and they want to go right to the first clinic or emergency room that they can. It is actually more protective that they do not do that. Do not go to the emergency room. If you're having any symptoms, if you feel like you've been exposed or you're a confirmed case, call your healthcare provider. And if you don't have a healthcare provider, call any public health clinic front desk. There are staff there who are equipped to walk you through what to do. People have been calling worried about how do I transport myself? What do I do? All of those questions, those front desk folks will have. So your healthcare provider will help you with that. A public health clinic can help you with that. And if you're having a literal medical emergency, definitely call 911 and let them know you're having some symptoms. This number here, and I'll just say it out loud for the folks who are on radio not looking at this, is 206-477-3977. That is our coronavirus call center. So that is staff who have moved away from their regular jobs and are working specifically to answer calls about coronavirus. That is, really anything you want, but there are also medical professionals at the end of that line that can help walk you through concerns you may have. If you really think you've been exposed to a confirmed case, please call that number. I've heard stories of people being reluctant to call. They feel like they're just going to get better. It's not just for you getting better. It's for us to understand how to help others who may have been around you and to support you, right, as you continue to do your things to take care of yourself. So please call that number. And if you feel like you've been exposed to a confirmed case or you are sick. Who's getting tested? So there's been some information about tests not being available. I will say testing is becoming more available, but there's still a limited ability to process those very quickly. So if you feel like you're sick, if you have some symptoms, call your healthcare provider and recognize your healthcare provider may tell you, you know what, it's actually better for you to stay in your house and take care of yourself. Keep checking in with us about what your needs are, whether it's food, whether it's medicine, whether it's other things, and we'll work with you and other social supports to get you what you need. But it may be that going to the clinic or getting to be checked into a hospital is actually going to do you more harm than good. So don't be alarmed if you call in and folks tell you that you just may need to stay at home and take care of yourself in the best ways that you can.
All right. Just again, if you live in South Seattle and you've been tested, let me know, because the people who've been tested so far have wealth, play professional sports, are in the public eye. Apparently, there's a drive-through testing now at the University of Washington. If you're engaged or involved with the University of Washington, if you live in South Seattle and you've been tested, let us know, because I haven't heard about any testing impacting and going on in South Seattle. And Candace, I don't know if you can tell me how this will impact South Seattle and where folks who live in South Seattle will be able to get tested. I'm going to talk to Michelle Branham here in a bit from Atlantic Street Center, and maybe I'm getting ahead of this, but apparently there is some effort to get them engaged in providing testing. I'm going to give you that information. So right now I'm just saying, so that hang on, we will be talking. This is just happening this morning, but I'm not aware of anyone in South Seattle. I know that there was a case in Akikarozi, and I don't know if that's been confirmed through a test or not. But anyway, I just wanted to move forward because, again, our interest here is on South Seattle.
Yeah, and I will say that from an overall public health perspective, there is a deep understanding for the staff who are working on the front lines around the inequitable historical impact of policy on South Seattle and the need to make sure resources get to people who have been historically disadvantaged. So please do know that we are advocating. We have South Seattle in mind. I can't speak to specific cases because of protected health information, but what I can tell you is that is top of mind for those of us who are working this response.
So there could be people, because we've heard about Kirkland, and if people in South Seattle think that they are safe because there hasn't been a death reported, there could be lots of people walking around in South Seattle who have coronavirus, but nobody's been tested. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is true for the entire United States and world, for that matter. Right?
And it is. But you know I'm focused on our community.
Yep, and I hear you on that. So just really quickly, because I think this is important too, just defining isolation and quarantine. These can be really scary terms, particularly for communities who have already experienced things like this and are currently experiencing things like this that have nothing to do with their health benefit, but have everything to do with inequitable impact on them, their families, and their communities. When we say isolation, what we mean is separating people who are currently ill so that they don't spread disease. When we say quarantine, we talk about separating people who've been in personal contact with sick people, but they're not yet showing symptoms. So we use those two words in a public health space to delineate currently ill versus not currently showing symptoms but exposed. And as always, what we try to do in every way possible is make sure that that can happen in the comfort of someone's home if they have one. And if they don't, there are resources being stood up to try and address unsheltered people.
Oh, there again. I got to break in here. So my understanding is that there was an unsheltered or homeless individual who was identified. This individual was moved to the unoccupied Econo Lodge in Kent. I guess this is the first person to be in this Econo Lodge. But if you are part of the homeless population, if you are a person who is unsheltered, you don't really have the ability to isolate yourself and quarantine yourself. And by the same token, families that live together, uh, with multiple individuals in the home, how do you isolate and quarantine?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I will just say internally, so that folks are aware, that guidance of, hey, we live in a multi-generational home and we don't have specific medical guidance on how to keep our folks safe. That guidance is in development right now as we speak. So there are folks that are on the ground with us from CDC that have flown out here to Seattle to support our operations and are working on some clear medical guidance around some of that with our medical professionals locally. So I hope to be able to send that out relatively soon because I understand now that schools are canceled, now that things are shut down, people are going to be in close confined spaces. What I will say is it is some of the same stuff that we're telling folks on the external, right? It's making sure that surfaces, etc., are wiped down. Things are sanitized and disinfected. That folks are not in close proximity and close contact. But we can get more clear on that guidance as we work with our health professionals to push that out.
Thank you, Candace. Go ahead and continue.
Yep. So the other piece of this is, and this presentation is largely geared toward community-based organizations, service providers, and in some cases employers, but we're really urging employees to stay home when they're sick and employers to support that. So, thinking about telecommuting, and I know that even in my own profession, it is really hard to get colleagues to stay home. We're very socialized to be together as human beings, and that doesn't stop for the work that we do in a 9 to 5. But at this point in time, we're really encouraging people to telecommute. Take your laptop home if you can, and recognizing that that's a privilege, right? Like you can't telecommute if you're an Uber driver. So we recognize that, and there's work going on around that. But as much as you possibly can stay home and telecommute, that is caring for yourself and caring for others because you're helping create a less crowded space. So do what you can to remove yourself from crowded spaces and not create those gathering spaces. There are also, people also say, well, I can't, my regular job duties are non-functional. Think about how organizations actually might be able to support this new way of functioning for us, because I will say this is going to be a few months, right? This is not a pandemic that's going to end tomorrow or next week. So people will have to get used to doing things differently. And there's some planning elements that go along with that. So thinking about how can you help your organization in those planning elements and shift job duties so that you still get your paycheck, you help your organization function in this time, and you can support that work from a home space where you're not in crowds of people. For folks who are contracted, like Tony, I heard you talk a lot about needing donations, and, I know there are a lot of folks around contract work, whether you're contracted with the county, with the city, or other funders. Work with your funders to get creative in shifting your contract deliverables. I would say community-based organizations know their communities the best. They know their needs the best, and they know how to shift their staff and their functioning and their operations to best support their communities. As somebody who works in government, don't be shy to put that proposal together and give it back to your funder and say, this is what we need in order to accomplish these goals. I highly encourage folks to think creatively about how to shift those contract deliverables.
And
And yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna comment on that. So, again, there is a process for getting grants. There is a process for getting money. If you don't have the infrastructure set up that the people who are getting the millions of dollars are comfortable giving you the money, then you're not going to get the money. That does not mean that your community isn't suffering, that your community isn't on the worst end of this. And so the community has to say to these entities, that's great that you're giving umpteen millions of dollars to, and I'm not going to name any agencies, but we need money directly in our community. So we have to figure out a way that we can get money directly into the community, not on the fourth hand or the fifth hand or the sixth hand. By the time it's watered down and then they've waited so long that nothing can happen, people are going to need help immediately. So if you have an idea, put some pressure on those entities and say, okay, these are the rules that you set up. Right now, I don't understand how these rules are working or how I'm supposed to, but I do know that my community is suffering and I want to make a difference in my community. So
Absolutely.
the way to do that is to say, okay, you have this granting process. I don't understand it. And the way that you have, again, I know that for independent media, I'm frustrated because I think it's important for independent media to be a reliable resource for members of the community, but there is no system of support for independent media to play the role that we need to play, the increased role that we need to play. And so I'm doing that. And if you're out there and you're having some of the same issues, well, you know what? This is also a great time to make a change in the way that money is distributed and who gets that money. Okay, there's my little soapbox moment. All right.
Absolutely. Tony, I couldn't have said it better. And I would say, too, folks sometimes forget that they can put that in their application. Put the capacity building dollars you need to scale up in your application. It is an essential part of doing the work. That counts. And yeah, that's helpful. Thank you for saying that, Tony.
So again, we have a Rainier Avenue Radio GoFundMe account. We've never asked the community for money. We've been in existence for 2 years. We started off broadcasting out of a library, and we've grown. We've never asked the community for money. We are this time because it's an emergency. And we feel that we are going to be responsible to our community, and we want to make sure that we can continue to do things like this and grow it and reach more folks. We plan on broadcasting in several different languages for folks who aren't getting the message because they don't speak English. We're already formalizing a group of folks who will be on the air, again, to share this information. We're going to be running public service announcements in multiple languages. We're trying to get people to come on. All of this costs money. And so, again, that's why we have our very first GoFundMe account. So if you've been thinking about giving money to this entity or that entity, I'm here to tell you, give some to Rainier Avenue Radio so that we can help impact South Seattle and continue to do what we do.
That's great. And just in the vein of helping folks continue to do what they do, for folks who are in a place of employment, just for folks to understand that there is a statewide Washington paid sick leave law, there is a Washington paid family leave law, there's a City of Seattle paid sick and safe time law. And I just want folks to understand what their rights are around this, and also for employers what their responsibilities to their employees are around this. So this is on our website. You're free to browse these links. They actually take you right to the organizations that are responsible for the administration of these laws. So if you have questions, you'll reach out to places like LNI, City of Seattle, etc., and work with them to understand your specific situation. This is just, the basics. I'm sure y'all have all seen in restaurants and posted up in other places, good hand washing practices. This is one thing I do. Every time I touch my eye, rub my eyes, touch my nose, I actually out loud remind myself not to do it. There's something about that helps me not do it. But in this point in time, like you said, Tony, you've got some underlying stuff. I also have some underlying stuff, right? I'm sitting at home right now, working from home, doing this interview where my coworkers are all in the office. So, thinking about actually applying some of these health and hygiene messages as much as you feasibly can. And then checking the overseas travel. I know folks have family that are coming in from out of town who have, trips that are unavoidable, or they've got folks traveling at this critical time. Please do go ahead and check the CDC's traveler guidance if you have folks that are making those trips.
Okay,
And then
before we get into supporting healthy hygiene, we're going to take another quick a break here, and we'll be back with you to share more information on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
New wigs and cocktail dresses, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
On Rainier Avenue Radio.world, look for the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show. I'm Dennis Weaver, your good food guide and host, helping you to feel good and look good, and who wouldn't want some of that? All that and more from the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Stories, songs, and guests. Begin living the organic good food life, and the rest of your life just may be the best of your life. Hose up, baby, to your help.
This is Big Poppy, host of Jazz from the Cabinets. Join me each week for a listening tour of the first century of jazz, an eclectic mix of Dixieland, big band, cool jazz, bebop, contemporary jazz, world jazz, all jazz in all forms. That's Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy on Rainier Avenue Radio, streaming worldwide on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Hello, this is Sage Prince. Are you considering making lifestyle changes, eating a healthier diet, but you're not quite sure where to start? Well, I can help. Just My Opinion, a music program centered in R&B and hip-hop, but delivered in an organic, free-range music mix, providing you a nutrient-rich listening environment that can improve your mood and overall sense of well-being. So start your healthy lifestyle with healthier listening. Check out Just My Opinion with Sage Prince here on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
This is Karen Z with RainierAvenueRadio.world, and we want to hear from you. Our goal is to amplify and share the diverse voices of Southeast Seattle residents. Do you know of an engaged community member who should be featured in a community spotlight? Tell us about them. Do you know of an upcoming family-friendly, educational, or cultural event coming up? Tell us about it. If you have news to share, contact us by emailing RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com. Once again, please email us at RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, your host, Tony B. The show I do is called Street Beat. This isn't Street Beat, but again, it is definitely the beat of the city. Joining me a little later in the show, again, a number of different people who will be here. Deshaun Jackson will be here from John Muir. Well, not actually here. We're asking people to call in. Louise Sherman will be here from the Greater Business Association of Seattle, Greater Business Seattle Association. I got to get that right. Louise Sherman will be joining us. So Michelle, I think it's Brandon Williams, will be joining us from Atlantic Street Center. Bruce Harrell, who was just appointed to the COVID-19 Small Business Task Force, will be joining us. Omari Salisbury, who's the manager for media for Africatown, will be joining us. And Marcus Green from the Seattle Emerald will be joining us. And then we also have a couple of people who have contracted the coronavirus who will be calling in and joining us as well. Right now, we are talking with Candace Jackson from King County Health.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. So just talking about this piece around, what does it mean to support healthy hygiene? So we give out these individual messages, like what you can do as an individual, but we're also really, there's a critical element for us from a public health perspective of thinking about those organizations you mentioned who are out there serving the community. There's no way we as government could do what you all do. You are the heart, the pulse of the community, and we need you to function, to be able to be at your best, and to be able to know how to serve the folks that are coming into your organizations and into your spaces in a way that's going to keep them healthy. So one of the things that we are advising is to increase hand washing stations and access to sanitizers and tissues. So this is, if you have extra tissues, boxes of tissues, put those out. And for folks who are especially doing youth programming, make those announcements. Remind kids to wash their hands. I saw something really cute on Facebook the other day where there was a youth worker or a teacher who had put a stamp on a kid's hand, and like as much as, as many kids as could wash off that stamp, by the end of the day, they got a prize. Thinking really creatively about reminding kids and youth to wash their hands. Posting signs. Early on in this response, we had some folks working in the office who work with youth, and they would just remind people that this is a no hug and handshake zone. I know in my community that is really hard to abide by. We're affectionate. We like to hug each other. We're close. So, that it's a little bit of a pain point, but reminding ourselves to give that verbal affirmation, reminding us to tell people we love them, we care about them, and all of those other things that don't require physical contact, but also create that social cohesion. Reminding folks to stay home if they're sick. So if you have a client list and you're able to call folks before they come into the office, check on them before they come in. Ask them, are they sick? Ask them, how are they feeling? What's going on with them? Are they concerned about potentially catching coronavirus? Do they have an underlying health condition? And then if you can provide that service in another way, work to do that. We are here to brainstorm that with folks. I've had a number of service providers call me and say, you know what? This is how I'm providing services right now. Help me think through how to do this, because this is a critical service. We feed people, or we house people, or we do these other things, and we're here to help you think through how to shift your service model so that you can keep doing what you're doing. Creating a plan to separate sick people. We know that not everyone's going to follow the rules. So what's your plan, and does your staff know it, of what to do when somebody shows up to your place and they're sick, they're coughing, or they look like they have a fever, or they look ill. And then think about flow. Like, what is the flow of people through your space? How can you use tables and other things that create barriers that allow space so that staff can keep doing their jobs, but people can also receive and enjoy the service that is being provided? And then cleaning and disinfecting. We talked about this quite a bit, but this is just, a list of things for folks to look at: laptops, keyboards, mice, telephones, armchair rests, eating tables, cutlery, all of the hard surfaces that you can clean. And then really importantly, this is different than just regular cleaning. If you think you've had a suspected or confirmed coronavirus case in your facility as a community organization, that link will walk you through exactly how to clean and disinfect for that specific situation. So all the other stuff is just regular day-to-day cleaning and disinfecting. Your regular household cleaners will work for that. When you're looking at this suspected or confirmed coronavirus case, you definitely want to follow those instructions. It's a little bit more thorough, it's a little bit more specific, and it'll walk you through step by step what to do.
Now, can folks assume that if you put cutlery in a dishwasher, that when it's done, it's safe?
If you're talking about home use versus commercial use, those are different. So if you are a food distribution or service provider, you should be getting those instructions from our public health department. And if you are at home use, the way you typically clean your stuff, yes, is going to be just fine.
Okay. Thank you.
So things that keep us healthy. We are always, like, in these types of responses, I feel like as public health officials, we're always telling people what not to do. And it feels so, like, restrictive and negative, but things we want to remind people to do. As much as you have access to healthy foods, please eat a healthy diet. Like, there is this temptation, even on my part, to just eat junk food because it's quick, because I'm stressed out, because I have a lot to do. But as much as you can, that's going to help you stay healthy. That's going to help your immune system. Get sleep. Like, in this response, public health officials are reminding each other to go home. Like, go home and sleep. Otherwise, you are more at risk for getting sick. We might be isolated, but you can take a walk with your neighbor, with your friend, with some of your family members. Get fresh air. Walk around the neighborhood. Take a walk. Drive and take a walk somewhere. Mindfulness techniques, just slowing down and getting into your body. That's one thing I often remind myself. I'm so in my head just because of our society and our culture. Remembering to get back into your body and be mindful of your space, mindful of where you're at, mindful of how you're feeling is so important to your health. And even though we can't be in physical space with each other, like call your folks, especially our elders. Like let's call and check on people. I had, this is embarrassing, but like I didn't realize at one point that you could Facebook video. This is many years ago. You could video call and it would just pop up. I thought I had to have special apps and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook call your people, right? Like use those apps so people can see your face, right? See your expressions. That helps with some of this social, this distancing, this physical distancing that we are implementing in a public health space, because this is not, like I said, it's not going to go away in the next 2 weeks. And then just keeping kids active. I know of a lot of moms that are friends of mine who have called and said it's just really hard to think of activities to do with the kids while they're out, So share some of the things that you've come up with on social media. But, some of the things we've thought of is just think about games to play. Have a dance party at the house.
Uh-oh.
Go to
a dance
park,
party at the house.
Right?
That you know what? Because on the dance floor in public, I have 2 left feet. But at home, I am Michael Jackson, Prince, Sammy Davis Jr. That's a good idea. Have a dance party at home, and you can get footloose.
Pull the Soul Train line out,
You don't have to worry about being as good as the person who's next to you, who knows all the latest moves and steps. You can do your thing. Good idea.
Exactly.
You might have a dance party right here in the studio.
I see you over there, Tony.
See, a little bit, yeah. Okay.
And then goes back to, I won't harp on this, but just things you can do as an individual. I will say, if folks, employers are stressed out about how to do this stuff, we are here as public health. We have a whole business task force. We've stood up. If businesses have questions, they can call us. We will help them. We want to do everything possible to help make this easier on folks. It's not going to be easy, but help make it easier on organizations, small businesses, community organizations, and then the general public. This is kind of a repeat, but employers do play a role. So thinking about those policies, thinking about your practices, thinking about how you're separating sick employees, what you're doing to encourage folks to stay home, those are all important. And I just updated this slide because it was yesterday or the day before that we had put out the public health order that no more than 250 people can gather at an event. And then if you are under 250 people, you have to comply by certain rules. Right? Like you have to create some social distancing, like standing 6 feet or more apart. You have to have a way of making sure people who are over 60 or have chronic medical condition are encouraged not to come. These are some of the recommendations you all have been hearing. And I just want to say it's important, 250 is a large number for an event. For things that are smaller than that, we just want to make sure folks can have enough physical space away from each other, right? This does not mean cancel everything and don't talk to anyone. There's a lot of communities of color who are reaching out to say, we're terrified, so we're just not leaving the house. Well, that's not sustainable for months and months at a time. We need our services to operate. So we're like, if you're at a reading group, think about a small reading group, right? Think about creating space in that reading group. If you have an older adult who has been advised not to go out in public, go visit them, right? Do something at their house. Go have dinner with them. And following the advice, making sure you're washing your hands, making sure you're taking proper precautions so that you're not bringing illness into the house, but that you are able to still socialize. Those have what we call social emotional support are critical for life safety. We cannot have people's mental state deteriorating in this type of event. And so this is just more of our, this is right off of our blog, right off of our website. If you have events fewer than 250 people, these are the recommendations that you will need to follow. And, we recognize that depending on the type of service organization you have, that is going to be nuanced. And so we're happy to help you walk through what that means. Right. So this is kind of older information. Obviously, the numbers are growing. Our website has some up-to-date case information, kingcounty.gov/COVID. So kingcounty.gov/COVID has our most frequent press releases, updates, numbers, those kinds of things, guidance as much as we can in as many languages as we can get translated. And then this is just an idea of what we do. So a lot of people, I didn't know what public health did before I worked for public health, but in this particular response, public health is playing some major roles around disease surveillance and investigation. So working directly with people who are impacted and the healthcare systems that those folks are working with to make sure they have what they need, and that we are following where the spread of this is going, making sure testing and all of that stuff can happen in communities. Coordinating services. So if somebody is under isolation or under quarantine, and they don't have access to food or their medicines, etc., that number that we listed is important to call, because we want to know that. We want to make sure you're supported in every possible way if you need to isolate yourself or you're under quarantine because you may have been impacted by a suspected case. Messages and materials. So this is what we're doing right now with Tony, right? Like just getting messages out to the community, distributing materials, and trying to understand as we engage with communities, who is most impacted, how are people impacted, and what do we need to be doing to shift our operations to support people who are the most vulnerable in our communities around this disease. So this is our structure, or I should say this is a small portion of our structure. This actually extends out multiple times, but you can see the number of task forces we have available. What is not listed on here that actually is on here is there is a specific older adult task force that is thinking about services and things that are specific to older adults, whether it be housing or feeding programs or healthcare things. So we're thinking about this, and we realize all of these topic areas relate to one another and they cross over. We are in close communication with one another, but just to let you know, these are the buckets of things we're thinking about in approaches, in policy, in resources, in services. We talked a little bit about the anti-stigma stuff. These files are posters. Those are available to you all. You are welcome to print those out, put them up. We may actually even have some printed if you want us to send you some, but these are also available on our website. So, the idea that you cannot tell who's ill by looking at people, please do everything you can to interrupt stigma, right? Be bold, speak up, gently correct false information, ask questions about people, and most of all, show compassion. This is not an easy thing for us to go through as a society, and specifically not easy for communities who are already most impacted by the social structures and policies that have been already put in place. So remind yourself and others to respond with compassion. I will be putting together a training for community-based organizations and small businesses. My hope is to do that next Wednesday evening on how to prepare for an emergency. Not just that the pandemic is one type of emergency, but there are other emergencies that we think about in the public health space. So I am planning to put something on Wednesday evening for folks to understand what needs to shift or change, or how they need to prepare in their business for an emergency. So I will send that information to Tony, and he can share it with you all as you desire to be connected. This is the same thing. This is a little bit more tailored to businesses, but this is also on our website, just showing folks that there is a shortened version of this plan for small businesses who may not necessarily be service providers, but you are a business. And then this is just how to stay informed, right? There's our website. Our Public Health Insider blog is some of the latest communication from our communications team. There's our number. We have a Monday phone call that you all are welcome to join from 4 to 4:45 for community partners. And you are always welcome to email me personally. So that's my email address there in the middle. And I really appreciate you, Tony, and appreciate what you're doing, and feel like what you're doing is so pertinent to the community and being able to get this information out. So thank you.
Well, Candace, thank you so much for joining us. This won't be the last time that we talk, but I'm glad that it was the first conversation that we had, and I appreciate the information. that you've given us. And if we have any questions that folks give us, I'll get back to you and see if we can get those questions answered. Are there any final words? We're going to talk to some folks from our community here, but before we do that, Candace, anything that you want to say to our audience before we let you go?
Yeah, I just want to say I know that emergency relief is top of mind for people, and you are going to talk to some folks later today around some of that funding and how that's all going to happen. And I just want to remind folks that our regular infrastructure is likely needing to shift. So think creatively about other jobs you can do, and please do not be afraid to pose other business models, jobs, and functions that will help us continue as a society to funders and to other folks. For those of us who are most impacted in this, like historically, we often have some really amazing ideas about how to support our communities, and don't be shy about putting those proposals together and just sending them. We need y'all. We rely on y'all. I personally, with or without my King County hat, really care about folks in this community and want to do everything I can to connect dots to make sure people get what they need.
Well, you know what? It's nice when the right person is in the right position. Thank you for joining us, Candace. And we're going to get on to some of our other phone calls. So I guess that would be bye for now. Thanks, Candace.
Thanks, Tony.
All right. We are going to, again, try to get in touch with some folks who've expressed interest in being on the show. And we've got a number of them. So, again, you're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world. The show is about the coronavirus and its impact on South Seattle. Of course, that means it's the whole world. But this has been called the epicenter. So what we do here could show other folks how to do it. And again, you might hear me railing on the concept of, where are we going to get our services from when I look at all these entities that are getting all these millions of dollars and know that they are not truly connected to the community. They rely on other resources. Part of the reason why they do that is because they know that these other resources can handle large sums of money. Well, then that money eventually trickles down to smaller entities and smaller agencies, and finally it gets to the communities. And this is about life or death, and I'm not over-dramatizing this because the disease has no cure. And if you are young and you take this back to your home and your household and you have someone who's elderly or whose immune system is compromised, if it happens to you, that's a huge number. So I believe we have Deshaun on the phone now. Deshaun, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Who is this?
Yeah, this is Deshaun.
Hey, Deshaun, how are you? Well, first,
I'm blessed.
Deshaun, I want to make sure I have your information here to share correctly with people. You are the student and family advocate at John Muir Elementary School. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
All right. Well, let's just get started. How is the coronavirus impacting your community of parents and students at John Muir Elementary School?
Wow, it's really impacting us hard. We have a lot of students that rely on our school for more services than just education, for breakfast, for lunch. We have mental health services. We have just a nurse there that can check them. And so, for some of our students, school may be the only time that they may have a meal that day. We also have a lot of we have homeless students, students in shelters. So it's going to cause a huge impact on our students. We thought it was going to only be for 2 weeks, but this 6 weeks is, wow, it's going to be stressful for a lot of our students and their family.
What is the process that, as a school, you use to share information with staff, with students, with parents about the coronavirus? Or is that something that just, and just keep it real with me, that you weren't prepared to do as a public school, K through 5?
Well, we get information that the district sends us. So they email information to all of the staff. And then we send out that information to our families. So it's strictly prepared by the district, and we send it out just as they prepare it and send it to us. And it's, via email. A lot of our families don't have computers. We have newsletters that we send out. And like I said, this is the first, we've ever had to deal with some of this magnitude. So, that's we basically put out the same information that the district put out.
And in your position, how does this impact you when there is just not a lot of information that you have to share?
Right. It impacts me a great deal because my part in school is I deal with the families, not only just the students, with their families as well. And so, there's a lot of misinformation out. There's a lot of miscommunication. So I'm trying now to dispel a lot of that. Also, finding our families that aren't able to go to places that we've set up to get food, that may need help with their bills, that, may need childcare. So it's, I'm actually doing more work now that school's out than, I do during school. Because we have a lot of students that are in apartments down out the Dakotas, Rainier Vista. There's a new apartment open at Gardner House. So we have students in all those areas and even more that I have to try to get in contact with that are unable to get, like I said, they may not have computers or be able to get the message, or, their kids may not have brought the newsletter home. So it's, we're going to make it do what it do, and we're going to, pull through this. The great thing about this, everybody's coming together. Try to help everybody out, all the schools, Franklin, all the schools in the South End. We're all getting together and trying to help all of our students out.
And you know what? And I am aware of that, and I want you to talk about that in a second, because we do want to talk about those stories. But I do want to ask you, you have a program in the morning where I think for a couple of hours, youth can come in the morning and they get breakfast, and that's gone. And then also with that, the people who were working are now not having that job anymore. How is that all working out?
It's going to affect especially the people that are working. I mean, they're not part of the school district, so they're not. I'm assuming that. I think it's the Parks Department. I'm assuming they probably won't be getting paid. Now our breakfast is actually, they're going to be starting to have breakfast not this coming up week, the week after at Franklin High School. So this coming up week from 11 to 1 o'clock starting Monday, they're going to be doing lunch. So the kids and the families can come get a lunch and take it back home. And then the following week, they're going to start doing breakfast and lunch. I haven't got the exact times yet. I most definitely will let you know. But next week, starting Monday, it's going to be 11 o'clock to 1 at Franklin High School. But yeah, as far as those caretakers that did our daycare and our after school program, I don't know what's going to happen with it. I mean, that's 6 weeks.
Let's talk about some of the efforts that are going on within the community to get us through this that you're talking about. And I know specifically there are some people doing some amazing work at John Muir and some of the other schools.
Oh yes, all of our teachers. We set up a network. We're going to do a backpack with food in it, as not only just for lunch to take back home with them. We have gift cards from the local stores around our community to hand out. In certain instances, we'll be able to help some of the families pay some of their bills. We won't, of course, we don't have the money to do everyone, but in emergency situations, we have money set aside to help those families. We are trying to get some transportation to take the food to those families that have elderly parents that aren't going to be making it to John Muir. And I and several other teachers are going to be doing that, driving food. If they need something from the grocery store, we can go get it for them. So our community is pulled together. Like I said, Franklin, John Muir, Mrs. Hawthorne, and like I said, it's amazing that we all came together for this crisis that we're having.
Now, I am so proud of our South Seattle community. Has anybody stepped forward to offer you resources, or has anybody stepped forward and say, "Hey, we have millions of dollars. Do you need some of this money?"
Oh, not to my knowledge, and I don't want to say they haven't because like there's other people that are working out with other folks as well. But I know like the stores have offered their, the food banks have offered their services, and money is greatly needed. But yeah, not to my knowledge. No one, we came out approached a lot of these organizations ourselves. Like I say, like the stores, Safeway, QFC. They've always been supportive in anything that we've done and what we needed. So they supplied a lot of gift cards and stuff like that. But I mean, as far as some of these big organizations, not to my knowledge, and it hasn't happened yet with me. But I mean, I'm sure there's other people that are working with me that they may have gotten in contact with them.
All right. Well, just checking. Is there a number or is there an entity that if people wanted to donate specifically to John Muir or as the schools in general or the work that y'all are doing as a group, is there a way to donate to that?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I can give you my information, which is my email address, which will come to my phone immediately, and I'll respond. It's D.A. Jackson. That's DAJACKSON 3, the number 3, at seattleschools.org.
Okay, and with that, will you be able to take donations, or will you refer them to another agency?
I will be able to do, like I said, if it's somewhere that I can get to, I will come get it. Like I said, I can meet whomever, and we can just put it out. If it's something that I can always find other people in that area to go out and reach out and collect whatever is offered to us. Because, like I said, it's most definitely needed.
All right. So, see, this is my point. We're going to have to find some alternative ways to help our community and get funding in. And nothing wrong against people who are donating money to different entities and different agencies that are set up for this. But it takes a while for that money to get to the community. And sometimes people are concerned, well, if I give money to the community directly, how will it be spent? Well, you know what? You hear the amazing things that are going on in our community right now, the way that people are pulling together. And what I'm telling you, what you just said, you couldn't even tell me an entity that could donate to help y'all with this. They have to give it to you directly. And so I'm saying, go ahead and give it to you directly. You're already working extra hours. You're working with a number of people. Let's make this happen the way that it needs to happen. Let's get the support that we need to have.
Most definitely, and it's most definitely going to our families. I mean, and it's most definitely needed. So, yeah, our families would appreciate that. Our community needs that, and like I said, it's time when we all have to put all the other stuff aside, come together and help. I mean, it's about our kids, and the main concern, our kids are pretty much feeling well. I mean, they weren't really getting sick, but a lot of our families, we have their kids living with their grandparents. We have a lot of Somali families that with their grandparents are staying with them, and their great uncles and Ethiopians, and I mean, in all of our students, it's affecting them. We don't want to bring something back to these grandparents whose system is already compromised because of their age and any other respiratory problems they may have, and that's the biggest concern that we were having, is that you're sending these kids back home into these homes where they have compromised elderly people, that it could affect even more.
All right. Can you just, finally share some of the misinformation that you've heard so that people don't feel like they're the only ones who are here, or they know that this other stuff is out there? What are things that you specifically have heard about that have been shared within your school community?
Oh, yeah. Some of our kids have gotten the impression that black kids or black people are affected by this virus, that it's a virus that attacks the Asian community, and we have a pretty large Asian population at our school, just the elderly. And so there's a lot of misinformation that is going around that has to be dispelled, because the virus has no color. It's attacking everybody, and we're all affected by it. So I've heard that from several of our students. And some I had to dispel and let them know that this virus, any and everybody can get it.
Deshaun, thank you for what you are doing and what you and others are doing. And I want to give you an opportunity for final words here, too, before I let you go.
I appreciate it. Most definitely.
Anything else you want to add, Mr. Jackson?
No, I just want to thank our community. Like I said, our community is the community I grew up in. You know, I went to John Muir, I went to Franklin. I'm so proud of how like I said, we have differences. You know, there's a lot of justification, but we've all came together for this very reason to help our kids and to help our people in our community. I'm so proud of how the South End has stood up. Now Baker, that whole area has stood up to help each other.
All right, thanks, Deshaun. We will continue to stay in touch with you, and hopefully you will continue to stay in touch with us as we go through this.
Most definitely. I appreciate it, Sean.
All right, my man.
Thanks.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
We are going to go to a commercial break here, and when we come back, we'll have someone else on the line to share information with us. You're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not trying out new wigs and cocktail dresses, I'm listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world.
On RainierAvenueRadio.world, look for the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show. I'm Dennis Weaver, your good food guide and host, helping you to feel good and look good, and who wouldn't want some of that? All that and more from the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show on RainierAvenueRadio.world. Stories, songs, and guests. Begin living the organic good food life, and the rest of your life just may be the best of your life. Hose up, baby, to your help.
This is Big Poppy, host of Jazz from the Cabinets. Join me each week for a listening tour of the first century of jazz, an eclectic mix of Dixieland, big band, cool jazz, bebop, contemporary jazz, world jazz, all in all forms. That's Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy on Rainier Avenue Radio, streaming worldwide on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Hello, this is Sage Prince. Are you considering making lifestyle changes, eating a healthier diet, but you're not quite sure where to start? Well, I can help. Just My Opinion, a music program centered in R&B and hip-hop, but delivered in an organic, free-range music mix, providing you a nutrient-rich listening environment that can improve your mood and overall sense of well-being. So start your healthy lifestyle with healthier listening. Check out Just My Opinion with Sage Prince here on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
This is Karen Z with RainierAvenueRadio.world, and we want to hear from you. Our goal is to amplify and share the diverse voices of Southeast Seattle residents. Do you know of an engaged community member who should be featured in a community spotlight? Tell us about them. Do you know of an upcoming family-friendly, educational, or cultural event coming up? Tell us about it. If you have news to share, contact us by emailing RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com. Once again, please email us at RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com.
We're back on RainierAvenueRadio.world. It's me, your host, Tony B. Joining me is Louise Sherman from the GSBA. Louise, are you there?
Yes, I am.
And it's the Greater Seattle Business Association, correct?
Yes, GSBA, Greater Seattle Business Association.
Why don't we start with telling us who you are and what you do?
Great. So GSBA is Washington State's LGBTQ and Allied Chamber of Commerce. We are actually the largest LGBTQ chamber in North America with over 1,400 small business members, and we're one of the largest chambers of any kind in the state of Washington. And what's different about us from other chambers, besides that we were started by LGBTQ folks, is that we look at everything through a lens of equality, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we believe business is a platform for social justice. And we do business development and advocacy, especially for small business and civil rights. And what also distinguishes us is we have a scholarship fund, and we give out over $600,000 a year to LGBTQ and allied students who are committed to civil rights and social justice. And our students are guaranteed up to 4 years of a scholarship ranging in size from $8,000 to $10,000 per year. And over 70% of our students are students of color. Many are undocumented or first generation, and over over 30% are students who identify as trans. So it's a very diverse scholarship fund for students who are often the last to get any support to go to school.
Well, here's the big question, and I know that it is a wide-ranging question, but sometimes folks don't know how big this is. So the question is, how has the coronavirus impacted your communities?
Well, it's been devastating. We are in the process of just calling as many members as we can and taking their stories. And they're really heartbreaking stories of people who have saved up so much of their lives to open a small business. And we know that minority people often open their own businesses when they don't feel comfortable in workplaces. So these are people who've struggled very hard to do that, and they are very close to their employees. So they're cutting hours, they're cutting employee hours, they're sometimes laying off staff, and some are closing temporarily. And now we're hearing, especially of our restaurants, starting to close permanently. So they can't pay their rent. And rents, we know already, were an incredible challenge. It's very challenging to be a small business owner in Seattle because everything is so expensive. Well, now there's no income and nobody coming into your doors. And the ripple effect to those who your truck drivers who deliver the things to you, to the farmers you might work with, the whole supply chain closed overnight. We've never really experienced anything like this.
Wow, let me stop you right there for a second because we're going by this really fast, and let's go over that. You're talking about the supply chain, the disruption, the truckers, the people who bring in food, everything shut down.
Yeah. I mean, it's shocking. We've actually we held a press conference and we had people who said, we lived through 9/11, we lived through WTO, we lived through the .com collapse, we lived through the banking failure, we lived through HIV in our community, but we've never had something in such a short period of time globally affect every single population all at once. And whether you're sick or not, you're being quarantined, or you can't move, or you can't have your employees come in. And some places, certainly we know in hospitality, you cannot do that work from home. So and doing it so fast, it hasn't given anybody a chance to prepare. But also, small businesses have very small cushions, especially micro businesses. When you're employing 2, 3, 5, 10 people, or you're even a mid-sized business in the restaurant industry, you have food trucks and you have various things, your margin of profit is so tiny to begin with, and you've probably mortgaged everything and you have every kind of loan you can possibly have, and then suddenly you're not getting any customers and you can't pay anything. And so the answer is you start closing down, and we're shocked at how fast things are closing.
For the folks in your community, have there been access to resources? Has there been access to information? How have you been able to determine what the needs are in the communities that you serve?
Well, mostly we're determining it by calling. I mean, I cannot tell you we're calling 20, 30, 40 members a day. Plus, we have an active page on our website of resources. We're asking members to reach out to us. We're sending broadcast emails. And so, and what's available, we have been in touch with the mayor's office. We're very pleased that the mayor has stepped up and created a small business recovery task force that I have been appointed to. And Mayor announced yesterday $1.5 million to support small businesses in Seattle. Well, Seattle has 37,000 businesses. $1.45 million does not go very far, and they're saying a maximum of $10,000 per business. Well, for businesses in Seattle, even small businesses, that might not even be a month's rent. So, and then it will not help any of the businesses of people who are independent agents. You're a massage therapist, or you might have your own painting business or what have you. You might not be eligible for that $10,000 at all. Now, the being able to defer B&O taxes, I think that's helpful. The state allowing people, at least the employees, to apply for unemployment insurance without having to go look for jobs. I think that's helpful, but I don't think that it's too little. It's just too little. What people really need are they need no interest loans. They need tax deferment or lowering of taxes. They need rent deferrals. Just a few $1,000s. It's not going to help people pay their rent or their payroll.
It hasn't, again, been that long. Can you share with us some of the feedback or some of the stories or some of the challenges that you are hearing as you make these phone calls?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I'm trying to reach this here. We were definitely gathering things from people, and mostly people are saying that we know that Tom Douglas, and he's not a small business, but he closed all 12 of his restaurants. But we just heard from a business on Broadway. They own a bar that was stable, so they decided to purchase a restaurant that's been out of business for years, Broadway Grill. They just opened their doors in December. But, of course, to do that, they took out loans. They have an SBA loan and what have you. And suddenly, no one is walking in the door. They can't get another loan, so they're looking at very high interest loans. We were talking at that Brown Girl Cooks, which is a catering company, and she's opening. Christy Brown is opening up one of her first restaurants, and will she be able to open up? This is what we are hoping she will. She's a very determined person. We heard of a Mexican restaurant that opened. It just had its 1-year anniversary, and it was so leveraged with loans already that when this happened, they have closed permanently on their 1-year anniversary. They were at our press conference, and it was just shocking. But they said, well, they can't get any more loans, and they even some of the restaurants are talking about, well, we even took money out of our, if we owned a home, we have our home equity, and we've taken money from that. So how do you pay these things off? Or are you going to also, could it put your home in jeopardy? Just a note recently from a T-shirt company saying it's ghost town. We had customers cancel orders as their events are being canceled. There is no new local customers. Even our national retailers are canceling, shrinking, and postponing orders. I am planning for the worst right now with layoffs scheduled starting mid-next week if things continue to get worse. I'm gathering information on unemployment for my employees, but there are no resources so far for small businesses. I'm definitely not looking to defer my taxes because if I can't pay them right now, I'm not going to have any more funds later on. This is after 11 years of being open, and we are barely hanging in.
Wow. There again. The show is the impact of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. And so we obviously have folks in South Seattle listening, surrounding communities listening, but we also have a lot of folks listening from around the region, around the country, and around the world, as they've called Seattle the epicenter of the coronavirus. So as you're saying this, are you thinking in terms of how other cities, how other states, how other countries are taking in what you're saying?
Well, I think it's very similar. Small business is the backbone. Even though everybody always talks about large business, small businesses actually employ most people. And we have heard, so if business is down 20 to 90%, I think that's happening. And there are other countries where small business is still cherished. So it's still the major business. I mean, I can't imagine what's going on in Italy right now, where South Korea, where small business is everywhere. So I think it is definitely very similar. And what people don't realize is sometimes that not only are they the employers, but small businesses are the donors. they're the ones that the PTAs go to and say, I'm having my bake sale, I'm having this, can you donate that? The caterers, how many of us call caterers up for a donation all the time for a nonprofit? And so they're not able to give to the nonprofits, who are also, just by the way, canceling every event you can imagine. I just got an email from Indie Chocolates. They're down at the market, and sales are down worse than the snowstorm, worse than Viadume, worse than construction around our business. And getting financial aid is what we need right now, from grants to zero-interest loans. Big businesses have always gotten tax breaks. What about the small business?
Now, I will be talking to Bruce Harrell later on, who is also part of the COVID-19 regional task. What is it? Small business.
Oh, yeah, it's a recovery task force.
Recovery task force. So I don't want you to necessarily wear multiple hats here, but what is that task force in place to do?
Well, we have our first meeting on Tuesday, so none of us has spoken to each other or to the mayor, but we've all spoken to the mayor's office. And I think it was the mayor's way of saying, okay, we need to immediately do something to hear what's needed. But even before that, she put something in place, as I said, around the B&O, deferring the B&O tax. She has. We're talking about working with the SBA on access to loans. They're coming up with some city funds, the $1.5 million that I mentioned, which are mostly federal funds. And as important as that is, and as small as it still is, it still won't. So many businesses will not qualify for it, because whenever you use federal funds, it has. There's a lot of strings to it. Will the federal government ease up on that? We don't know. We don't know. I think the governor is trying. There's so many areas, because there's business, but there's also the whole public health issue. Are schools being closed? How is that affecting small business? Where are parents sending their children? There's no daycare centers opened, and now there's no schools open. There's no community centers opened. I think, as we said, we've really never experienced anything quite like this.
What is your reaction to the response from your community?
Well, for us, what we're doing is really staying in touch with. We are trying to have a meeting, and she's been very responsive with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, because she's very concerned about small business, to see what the federal government can do. I know federal government declared a state of emergency, so that might release some more funds, which would be very good. We're fortunate in Seattle. We have paid sick and safe leave, but that is not true for everybody outside of Seattle. So if we can get more of that, we also have paid family leave, family medical leave, which I think will help certain people. I think what the mayor is trying to do is find out what is needed, and that's what our members are saying. So we're keeping our website up to date, our emergency resource page, which everybody is welcome to use, copy, what have you. They're also welcome to call GSBA up if we can be a voice to small business. Whether or not you're a member does not matter to us. We will certainly do that. So we're keeping in touch federally. We're keeping in touch with the mayor's office, with the governor's office. We're keeping all the resources up to date. We're reaching out to members. We're trying to tell their stories. We're trying to put all of our business development classes online that used to be in person. And we will make sure they're about what do you do when your cash flow dries up? How do you have what is the best way to protect yourself in any contracts right now that you have to sign? We're trying to think of how, as a resource, we can be there for our members with both information and support and advocacy. And, our staff is working from home. We've closed our office, but we're just on the phone and on conference calls 8-9 hours a day right now.
Wow. My guest again is Louise Sherman, the Greater Seattle Business Association. So if I heard you correctly, even if you are not a member at this point in time, if you want to find out answers or resources, they can give you a call.
everybody is welcome to call GSBA. I'm Louise Chernin. I'm happy to speak with anybody. We have a great website, thegsba.org, and it has a wonderful emergency page with links to everything that we're literally updating hourly. And if you're having an issue that we can be helpful with, we are happy to take that on right now. I feel the one thing our community knows, because we have survived other epidemics in terms of AIDS, is that the biggest strength we have is our community right now. If we can all work together and be there for each other and make those voices known and those needs known, that is the only thing we have some control over, is to be compassionate. Your last guest that talked about the importance of not scapegoating, of not thinking that a disease comes from any one place or any one group, that any country can have a disease and it spreads anywhere. Our enemy is the disease. Our strength is our community.
Louise, do us a favor. Can you make sure that you put us in contact with businesses that are impacted by these unanticipated challenges, and then also with businesses who are finding ways to make it work so that we can share their stories over the airwaves?
Absolutely. And many of our businesses, by the way, are from the Central to the South End, many of our member businesses. So we'll be happy to share that with you. I'll put some things together and send it to you.
So let's stay in contact, and let's continue as communities to make sure that we're in contact and work our way through this. This is uncharted waters.
It absolutely is. And thank you so much for covering this. I think it's incredibly important. And I do want people to know the gsba.org/emergency-resources. It's free to use. And again, call us. You don't have to be a member. Any way we can help. And thank you for all that you're doing to get information out. It's so important. Thank you.
One more again, because folks may not have had a pen ready, the way that they can get in contact with you.
So GSBA, our phone number is 206-363-9188. And our website is thegsba.org, thegsba.org. And the specific page is thegsba.org/emergency-resources.
Louise, thank you so much for what you are doing and the resources that you are providing. And again, probably the same for you. You're probably working harder now than you were previously.
Exactly. Well, thank you, and hope everybody who's listening stays safe and takes care of each other.
Thank you, and we will be in touch. You're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world. We're going to take a brief commercial break, and we are going to be back on the air again, and we are going to continue to talk to people from our community.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not trying out new wigs and cocktail dresses, I'm listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world.
On RainierAvenueRadio.world, look for the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show. I'm Dennis Weaver, your good food guide and host, helping you to feel good and look good, and who wouldn't want some of that? All that and more from the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show on RainierAvenueRadio.world. Stories, songs, and guests. Begin living the organic good food life, and the rest of your life just may be the best of your life. O's up, baby, to your help.
This is Big Poppy, host of Jazz from the Cabinets. Join me each week for a listening tour of the first century of jazz, an eclectic mix of Dixieland, big band, cool jazz, bebop, contemporary jazz, world jazz, all jazz in all forms. That's Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy on Rainier Avenue Radio, streaming worldwide on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Hello, this is Sage Prince. Are you considering making lifestyle changes, eating a healthier diet, but you're not quite sure where to start? Well, I can help. Just My Opinion, a music program centered in R&B and hip-hop, but delivered in an organic, free-range music mix, providing you a nutrient-rich listening environment that can improve your mood and overall sense of well-being. So start your healthy lifestyle with healthier listening. Check out Just My Opinion with Sage Prince here on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
This is Karen Z with RainierAvenueRadio.world, and we want to hear from you. Our goal is to amplify and share the diverse voices of Southeast Seattle residents. Do you know of an engaged community member who should be featured in a community spotlight? Tell us about them. Do you know of an upcoming family-friendly, educational, or cultural event coming up? Tell us about it. If you have news to share, contact us by emailing RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com. Once again, please email us at RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not trying out new wigs and cocktail dresses, I'm listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world.
On RainierAvenueRadio.world, look for the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show. I'm Dennis Weaver, your good food guide and host, helping you to feel good and look good, and who wouldn't want some of that? All that and more from the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show on RainierAvenueRadio.world. Stories, songs, and guests. Begin living the organic good food life, and the rest of your life just may be the best of your life. Hose up, baby, to your help.
This is Big Poppy, host of Jazz from the Cabinets. Join me each week for a listening tour of the first century of jazz, an eclectic mix of Dixieland, big band, cool jazz, bebop, contemporary jazz, world jazz, all jazz in all forms. That's Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy on Rainier Avenue Radio, streaming worldwide on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Hello, this is Sage Prince. Are you considering making lifestyle changes, eating a healthier diet, but you're not quite sure where to start? Well, I can help. Just My Opinion, a music program centered in R&B and hip-hop, but delivered in an organic, free-range music mix, providing you a nutrient-rich listening environment that can improve your mood and overall sense of well-being. So start your healthy lifestyle with healthier listening. Check out Just My Opinion with Sage Prince here on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
This is Karen Z with RainierAvenueRadio.world, and we want to hear from you. Our goal is to amplify and share the diverse voices of Southeast Seattle residents. Do you know of an engaged community member who should be featured in a community spotlight? Tell us about them. Do you know of an upcoming family-friendly, educational, or cultural event coming up? Tell us about it. If you have news to share, contact us by emailing RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com. Once again, please email us at RainierAvenueRadio.world@gmail.com.
We're back on RainierAvenueRadio.world, and joining us is, and I told the name up before, I'm not going to tear it up this time, Michelle Mitchell-Brannon. Hello, Michelle. How are you? Hello? Michelle?
Hello?
Oh, okay. There we are.
Hey.
From Atlantic Street Center, Michelle Mitchell-Brannon. Michelle, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Well, we're having this conversation today. We're actually going a little bit into overtime to make sure that we get some people on that we want to get on. And I definitely wanted to talk with you in Atlantic Street Center. Atlantic Street Center, of course, has been a fixture in South Seattle for, 100 and something years, right?
Yes, on 111.
111 years. Well, let's start with the question. First of all, let's talk about Atlantic Street Center, who you are and what you do.
Well, we are one of the oldest social service agencies. We provide a lot of direct service to families in the community, low-income communities of color, and African American and other people of color. We have after-school programs. We run kinship care programs. We have a huge behavioral health community programs, home visitors, early learning, everything that we do. It's pretty much at the core of education. So we're supporting families through parenting classes. We're doing a lot of life skills. We have a huge teen parent program. But yeah, we support all these families for the last like I said, 10 going on 11 years. And we know that barriers can be an issue for some of these families, so that's why we take to the community and we provide services there for them.
Well, the big question, which is a very pervasive question, how has the coronavirus impacted Atlantic Street Center, your clients, and people you serve, people that work there?
Well, it is. Yeah, for our first focus remains is to make sure that the health and safety of our community and staff are at the forefront. But it's impacted our families. A lot of them cannot go to work. They're in the food industry, businesses. They're in a lot of blue collar positions, and they're hourly workers. And so the income not coming in has impacted in terms of not being able to provide for additional food resources, now utility, and soon to be rental. They won't be able to take care of their rent coming up. So it has impacted our families. Some of the services that they would have gotten, specifically after-school programs, we recently just closed our after-school program to make sure that we can disinfect and clean things and common areas that the kids are in, so that we can ensure that we're, looking out for the safety of the participants, the community, and our staff. So that's put a barrier for some of our families whose kids are out of school now. Who need to go to work, who may not have those child care services, afforded them.
And it's also impacting your staff as well.
Absolutely. So we do have the majority of our staff is working remotely, still supporting families, our behavioral health, are making sure that they're doing assessing and screening to see that, if we can meet face-to-face with these participants, because now, they're having more angst and anxieties and issues around, what we don't know, what we're all learning in this community. And so we know that it's paramount and important that we still keep those services available to our participants, specifically the ones that are involved in our behavioral health services.
And you've talked a little bit about the number of services that you provide because of the coronavirus. What services are you going to have to suspend, and for how long?
So right now, we have suspended our kinship care program, which is support groups for our families who are raising their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, or relatives. Those are programs that give them some respite, support, and also teaching them some things about, reparenting these younger kids. And so we've had to suspend that, and that's their community that they look forward to coming to every week. Also, it provides the hot meal, for them, those that do suffer food insecurity, that they're getting those needs met in our service. So now we don't have that. And so we've had to suspend that, and we're looking to resume services after the 26th. But again, we're learning, just like the community is about this coronavirus and how it's affecting us and the health of our participants. The other services that we had to suspend, like I said, was our after-school program, our youth development group, and that's, where we would provide after-school life skills and education programs for these young people and their out-of-school time. Again, working with those families who have the food insecurity. So we're supporting those families by feeding their children before they even make it home at night, because we have kids that come to us about 1 and leave at 6. So, that is not afforded to them now, because we've had to change our services. We've had to suspend until after, right now, March 26th. But we are doing with those families, because I know this is the next question you're going to ask me, is how we're going to support them. So right now, to date, in the last 24 hours, we got about 76 families that have called talking about needing food. Now, we do know that the schools.
Let's not go right by that number. What was that number again?
Oh, go ahead.
No, tell me, what was
about
that?
76 within 24. This morning it was about 47, and now we're at 76. And they're looking for things like child care. Food is huge, though. Rental assistance, those that are needing help with trying to apply for these unemployment benefits, which has been pretty difficult, by the way. That line has been pretty hot, and they've been kicked off the line. Got here this morning 6 times. We were kicked off trying to support families to get on those temporary assistances through unemployment because they don't have the hours. So right now we're at 76 and climbing.
And that's just since this morning.
That's since this morning. That's
Wow.
since this morning. So we're pulling together some of our resources, and we're trying to put together little kits for families who need that food before they can access some other services. Of course, we're giving them resources to community food banks and other resources in the community, but we know that they're inundated with folks. And so we know that charity begins at home, right? So we want to support the very families that are in our programs. We want to make sure that we're taking care of them and we're not turning away anyone else who comes to us, right? So if they come with a need in the community, we're going to support those families as well.
Well, Michelle, we appreciate the work that you are doing and Atlantic Street Center is doing. Again, the same deal. Make sure you stay in touch with us if there are voices that need to be heard. If you are families that are facing these challenges, we want to get the word out about these challenges so that people know, so that it's not just swept under the rug, or people think since they don't hear about it on mainstream media that it's not happening. Are you, or have you faced any misinformation from your families, or families who have gotten, or they don't know where to get information, or they're unsure about coronavirus and what its impact is?
I'd have to say that the information that's been coming from King County and the Public Health Department has been so good. Also, the way the Seattle Public Schools have been giving information to families, so we definitely have been providing that information to them and answering any questions, talking about, ways to talk to your children about this in a way so that they understand, and also for those younger families and younger kids, creating activities that are a little bit more fun and taking a little sting out of what's going on about washing your hands and why it's important. But we haven't heard a lot of misinformation. It hasn't got back to me yet. However, we've been inundating them with information and updates as we get them. So, no, we haven't heard that. But I know you didn't ask this question. But when you do talk to those that can make changes, I hear about the monies that are being provided to small businesses, but nonprofits are small businesses. And we're at the forefront of this, because when they reach out, they're not reaching out to these businesses. They're reaching out to the organizations who are here that they have built trust and rapport with. And they're coming to us for the support. So who's supporting us? And our dollar is going to be directed our way so that we can better support our families. And not just the Atlantic Street Center, but many other small organizations. Because at this point in time, we talk about community. It's about us, like I said, putting our arms around these families and loving on them, because they really need us more now than they ever have before. So when you have those other folks on your show today, you pose that question. And how are they going to support us? Because we are the ones that are being inundated with these calls. And families are showing up to our center, although we have our folks working remotely, but we do have administrative staff here to support, because we don't want to miss a family in their time of need.
So it's the same deal. You hear that there's money out there, but you are at this point unable to access that money.
Well, I don't know about.
I've
heard about some dollars that we will be able to access.
Okay.
But there are the other needs that these families have. How are we going to do that? Are the monies coming to small nonprofits, other nonprofits? What if they don't have the capacity to have the money and the dollars, where they have to wait on reimbursement? Are those monies going to be readily available for those smaller grassroots organizations that are helping families? Because right now it's all hands on deck, and we all have to support our families right now, and we need to have the means to be able to do that.
Well, I'm unashamedly and unabashedly talking about the needs for South Seattle. I know that other communities have needs as well, and the surrounding communities around South Seattle. But as I mentioned before, it is often most difficult to get help into the places, the service providers who are boots on the ground and providing this initial, assistance. So I thank you for the work that you're doing, and I want to give you a chance for final words here, Michelle.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be able to kind of just talk about the things that we're still doing. We're still supporting our families. We're reaching out to our families. We're making sure that we're meeting their immediate needs that we can within, with our resources, limited resources. But again, thanks to all the other community folks and those out there that are loving on this community in this time.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Thanks for giving me a call. Appreciate it.
All righty. Bye-bye.
All right. We're going to try and get somebody else on the line here. We're actually over time, but there's some folks that wanted to be on the show, and so I'm going to try to give them the opportunity to be on the show before we shut down here. Again, you're listening to Rainier Avenue. Let me see that, Daniel. Rainier Avenue Radio .world. I'll share some information here with you again. As of today, Seattle Parks and Recreation have shut down the recreation centers. So recreation centers are closed again temporarily. Again, the list of places: South Seattle Community College is closed after receiving a confirmation of a positive COVID-19 case on the campus. So they will be doing remote operations all the way through the 27th. On Wednesday, staff members and students of Franklin High School had a sick-out protest because they just felt like there wasn't the attention given to them and the potential of the COVID-19 coronavirus. As you know, no longer are people allowed to gather in numbers of more than 250. I do have this information again about lunch being provided and where lunch will be provided that I can share with you. And I'm going to try and, again, we're just kind of doing this. I'm going to try and get in another one more call here, if it's possible. Let's see where. All right, just bear with me here for a second, and we'll see if we can make this happen. And again, the schools where you'll be able to get lunch, and apparently I was told unsure about breakfast, but there would be breakfast, and with John Muir it won't happen until the following week. Starting on Monday, you will be able to get breakfast or lunch at least at Dunlap Elementary School, Emerson Elementary School, Franklin High School, Aki Kurosi Middle School, Mercer Middle School, Rainier Beach High School, Rainier View Elementary School, Rising Star at African American Academy, formerly Van Asselt. And then there are also some schools in West and Southwest Seattle: Concord International Elementary School, Denny International Middle School, Chief Sealth International High School, West Seattle Elementary School, West Seattle High School, and there are some locations in the Central District as well. Lowell Elementary School, Bailey Gatzert Elementary School, Thurgood Marshall Elementary School, Meany Middle School, and Seattle World School. Couple other things I want to mention here really quickly. That there was just finally the first confirmation of an unsheltered person, a homeless person who was actually in a shelter, who has been confirmed with coronavirus. And there's been a lot of conversation about this. That individual was moved to the Econo Lodge in Kent, about 20 miles outside of Seattle. It's the first person to go there. And there have been conversations about that. We're gonna talk about all this stuff in future shows. Some of the things that are happening that folks are having issue with. The breakdown right now, as of yesterday, for coronavirus, and this is as of yesterday at about 4 o'clock, there were 270 cases in King County, 108 cases in Snohomish County, 17 cases in Pierce County, which that means Tacoma. So if you're thinking that in Tacoma, it's not happening. And what we've seen is that you hear a number initially that is small, and within a few days to a week, that number multiplies by 10. Cotidius County, 3. Island County, 3. Kitsap County, so that'd be Bremerton and Silverdale, 2 cases so far. Skagit, 2 cases. Thurston, Grant, Whatcom, Clark, Jefferson, and Grays Harbor still have 1 confirmed case. But what we do know is that there haven't been any tests. So if the cases are showing up there, people have been in contact with each other because they didn't know they haven't. And people are still, if they're not being quarantined, are still spreading this disease, which has no cure. So we're going to, again, be providing you with a lot more conversation. We're going to be providing you with conversation in multiple languages. We're going to be giving you current updates. We're going to be sharing your stories. We're going to be telling the stories that are emanating from South Seattle, both the good and the bad. We are just going to be that mirror that reflects our South Seattle community. I went a little bit overtime here, and we still weren't able to get all of the people on who wanted to be on the show. We will make that happen. Again, keep listening to the station. You'll be hearing public service announcements in multiple languages. I don't have it listed, but a number of, including Vietnamese and Spanish and Oromo. Again, there will be a number of different languages that we will have information available for you here on Rainier Avenue Radio, so that you get accurate information, up-to-date information. And at this point, it is also critical to have information that you can trust. And we're also going to talk about some of the myths and some of the things that are happening. Don't get it twisted. There's misinformation out there. And it's not just coming from conspiracy theorists. It's coming from governments as well, sharing misinformation. And this is critical to the survival of our communities. And so you want to have accurate information. So stay tuned. Keep it locked here on Rainier Avenue Radio. We'll also be communicating with you on our website and through our social media and platforms. And we'll also be